So welcome to the Smart Families Principal Online Talk. This is our second talk we are hosting specifically about EdTech. Today is the Safer, Smarter EdTech Talk, Managing Screen Time with Intentional Technology. Again, my name is Hillary Caceres. I'm the Executive Director here. I have two team members who've joined us who will also be speaking with you today. If you just want to say hello quickly.
Hi, I'm Douglas Matthews. I guess I'll go first.
Yes.
I'm with Smart Families. I'm the editor and researcher, among some other things, and I'm very happy to talk about EdTech with you today. It's a very fascinating subject, I think, and timely.
Agreed. I'm Ashley Hartman. I am an implementation coordinator with Smart Families, and I was a teacher and taught third grade and middle school. And so I'm super passionate about screen time and education, as I got to see firsthand some of the effects. And so it is very timely, like Doug said. So I'm excited to share some important things with you guys.
Awesome. Okay, so today we'll start with a recap. Like I said, this is our second talk for those who are not able to attend the first. That is located on our website. It was recorded. You can access it on the Smart Families website under online talks. So we'll do a very, very quick recap of that. We will be introducing our EdTech norms. We'll walk you through some of the survey results. Thank you for those who filled those out. Very, very helpful. We'll show you how to run a screen time audit and give you a sample policy framework. And then we'll go into some questions. So please, if there's anything during the conversation and you have a question, please go ahead and put it in the chat. Happy to stop or answer whatever we can at the given time. Okay, just to regroup a little bit on our last talk, we presented a lot of research and information about EdTech and what has brought us here today. Thankfully, we are starting to see some research come out on this topic as it's very new. And the research that we're seeing, thankfully, is no longer just being done by the individuals who are creating these programs. So I think that's really important to highlight, is that we're seeing some more, I guess you could say, baseline information versus those that potentially could be skewed by the developers. So digital distraction is unfortunately very common. We are living this as adults with those phones in our pockets. But the reports are showing that approximately 65% of students report being distracted by their own device, and specifically in math lessons. Moderate is much better at this point than frequent. And so again, with some of those research, we're seeing that more tech is not producing better outcomes as I think some of us were hoping and expecting with EdTech. And so that's something that's across the globe. And we saw that in the OECD analysis that minimal use tends to outperform frequent use. That's a very simple guide there. Handwriting still matters. While children are going to be even more reliant on technology as they grow up, we are seeing it as adults today. But it's not just so much that they may not be writing as often, it's just the pure act of handwriting is so important for their development. So that's something for us to keep in mind when it comes to how much handwriting is a student doing. We can argue they won't be doing much as they get older and in the workplace, but that's not the point of it. Handwriting strengthens summarizing, integration, and most importantly, I think, is retention. As we see humans in general not being able to retain as much information because we are getting so much of it, we want to figure out ways to help combat that. And handwriting is an amazing place to do that. And then we talked about student data as being an important part of the picture. There are a lot of risks that come along with some of these apps. in addition to risks of just inappropriate online content that might be accessed with some of those really smart kids who get around the security devices that we set up. So that's a quick overview. The document that was discussed in that online talk is available on our website under the information tab and EdTech. You will see a downloadable PDF that says EdTech for Principals, and you can walk through that should be interested. It is available for everybody. So the most important part and exciting part is we now launched Smart Families EdTech Norms. So as Smart Families schools and communities, you know, we have our own Smart Families norms that we have asked our communities to uphold within their families, within their culture. And that talks about just how smartphones are being utilized at home via social media, delaying smartphones, and just prioritizing family and values. And when we learn, those are amazing pillars for families to think about and how they incorporate a smartphone into their lives. Well, we felt the best way to help principals, really, because that's ultimately our goal here, is let's create some of those pillars that the principals can incorporate into the culture with their staff. So to kick things off, our first norm is just humans over hardware. Let's not forget that students are there to learn from humans. And so we can also argue that the most impactful way for a child or a human being to learn is through a relationship with another human being. We are not finding that the computers, even though AI is absolutely amazing and has come a very long way and it has great value, a human being will still always learn better when being connected with another human being. So that's what's most important here. And we just want to remind people of that, because I think we've been so excited with this technology and so excited with the amazing things that it can and will do for your students, but you have to keep those relationships at the forefront with teachers and students. The next is to prioritize tech ed to ed tech, meaning you need to have that tech education prior to a child being asked to learn on a device. So did we sit down and spend enough time with that child to learn how to type, to learn how to work on Word, to learn how to use a mouse, some of the basics? Did they get enough of that time before they were asked to take a test on it, before they were asked to learn how to add on it, and before they were asked to learn how to spell on it? They shouldn't have to worry about finding the T on the keyboard when they're still trying to figure out those sounds with a TCH and the different pronunciations. And so we want to start thinking about that tech ed and really boosting it up within our schools. A lot of this we saw with COVID, that we didn't have time to do that. We were in a rush. We were in a really, really desperate situation, and something was better than nothing. So now it's really nice to just go back and think, okay, you know what? I think we can bolster our tech ed, and that will really help in the long run. The second piece is really delaying those one-on-one devices. And we put in here at least until 6th grade. The reason we picked that age is really, I would love to see it even greater around 8th grade. But if we're going to go back to the neuroscience, which is exactly what really Smart Families relies on, is between the ages of 9 and 14 is the second window of opportunity. That is when their brains are firing once back up again, and they are pruning away skills that they have not started using and really focusing on those that they are using. So if we integrate too much technology at that time, those are the skills that are going to strengthen versus the executive functioning skills, which we know are so important to a child's development for the long term. So again, that 9 to 14 is the second window of opportunity. It is the most important time for a child to really be focusing. And that is often when we're handing them these one-on-one devices. And we want to make sure we can delay that as much as possible. And the last really fun piece, though, is just let's get back to prioritizing paper. We're seeing the handwriting decline. We're having challenges in math. I get it, absolutely happening across the board here. What's so nice, there's so much research that just says bring paper back. Children will learn, they will retain, they'll have the ability to work on so many skills that just come along with paper. And so that's okay. Let's just bring some paper back into the classroom. So those are our norms. We've also dived a little bit into daily limits. And so this is, I think, probably the most challenging piece for an administrator, because you don't really want to micromanage a teacher. But unfortunately, what we're seeing is teachers are not so much aware of what the other teachers are doing, right? They are focusing on their classroom. So what we really need is a broad daily limit that's and utilized across an entire school. And in pre-K through second grade, we cannot find any research that indicates that is a great time to put your child on a screen, because they're going to learn so much better. In fact, a lot of the research is saying the opposite. So pre-K through second grade, our recommendation is really 0 minutes on a one-on-one device for screen time. They need to be focusing on their bodies, their hands, using pen and paper, interacting with those human beings who are in front of them, creating those relationships, just understanding how to be a student, we know is so important, specifically in pre-K and kindergarten. So let's remove that distraction. Let's remove that wall that's making it a little bit harder for them. And we can get into then introducing that screen time in 3rd through 5th grade. Again, that is still part of that second window there from 9 years old to 14. But some integration of technology in that grade would be great. And I'll talk a little bit about that in the next window. Then we'll look at 6th through 8th grade, a combined recommended daily limit of 60 minutes. As a parent, I think, okay, that's just about as much time as I want my child on the device, even for the entire day. Let's not forget some of them need to come home and do homework on a screen. So this is just a sweet spot of a number for a daily limit recommendation. But what's most important here is make sure that we have a full vision of what each teacher is doing so that the combined number meets that limit. I think it's very challenging, specifically for educators, again, to get a handle on this, but we're going to provide you some solutions here today to do that. Next, we have, let me move my screen so I can read. We have our grain ban on intentional tech use. So we work closely with the diocese here in Houston, and we speak with other dioceses across the country. And we know that standardized testing is taking place very young and on a device. And so with that being said, the younger kiddos do need to know how to use it, and we get that. So the recommendation is to put them on a device a day or two prior to testing. They do not need to be learning and taking their spelling tests on it in order to be comfortable to take the standardized tests. So there's a very intentional use here that can come into play when it comes to accommodating for the standardized test requirements. And we all kind of laughed here. We think back, I remember as a child getting a sample test when I was younger with the Scantron. We even walked through what it was like to take a Scantron type test. We were given that number 2 pencil or whatever dotter so that we weren't nervous the day of. That absolutely can come back into play for pre-K through second grade. Again, a very big difference on the intentional use of technology versus the children having to learn on the technology. Second is 3rd through 5th grade. We really love this as being the amazing opportunity to teach the children about technology here. This is the best time to incorporate tech ed into your curriculums. This will help eliminate issues down the road, specifically in middle school and into high school. Let's dive really deep into Google Classroom. Let's teach typing. I had a whole semester of typing when I was a freshman in high school. I'm sure a lot of y'all on here can relate. It wasn't just a day or two, it was an entire semester where we walked through typing. Let's bring that back. Let's look at PowerPoint. We know that they're being utilized a lot in the classroom. And what's even more exciting is we can talk about Canva, which is design, which would make it exciting for them, keep them in line with what's going on today in the modern age. Children need to know these things. It's fun and it's great for them. There's no reason to remove it, but let's really focus on it and use it in an intentional way. Let's also talk about digital citizenships. how to appropriately email somebody, appropriately message somebody, what is the right tone, how to say hello, you know, Mr., Mrs., or so-and-so. We see this happening in high schools right now. They have, unfortunate, some really low etiquette because they just really never taught it. And so we think that incorporating this in a very strong way will help eliminate, again, those issues down the road. Another thing is fact checking. As we know, most children are not doing their research on an old-fashioned encyclopedia anymore. Rarely do they go into the library and pull up a book. They're getting their information online. And as human beings, as adults, we know a lot of that information is not accurate. I'm sure they're getting some guidance and support from their teachers right now on how to appropriately pull correct information. But let's really confirm and make sure students are learning the right way to do research online. And then finally, in 6th through 8th grade, that's when we want to consider introducing that one-on-one device. But let's make sure that the support is really strong. And then let's talk a little bit at that point about ethics and morals, because they are really given a lot more freedom when they have the one-on-one device. And that's a beautiful time to talk about what is morally right when it comes to the use of some of these devices. So that is a lot right there. This document will be shared with you, these EdTech norms, in a PDF after our call. And so I think this is something that we would love to see those principals who are ready to go in this direction to start sharing with their teachers, as this is the norm, this is the goalpost, this is where we want to land as a community here to ensure that technology is being utilized in a very intentional and loving way. And a lot of this is based on a lot of research that we've done here internally here at Smart Families, and also talking to a lot of students, parents, teachers, and administrators, hearing about what's going on today in the classroom. So thank you. I'm going to pass it over to Ashley, who's going to take it from here.
Here we are. Okay, thank you. And we're in business. Okay, so before I jump into some of our results from the survey that we're so glad you guys participated in, just one more word on the EdTech norms. Just kind of viewing these just like our other Smart Family norms that we have introduced to the community and have already implemented, kind of looking at it as a way of saying, okay, thinking back to when we first introduced no phones in schools, we had some schools who dropped phones and banned them completely right away. And then we had some schools who found that they were going to collect the phones upon arrival, put them into bags, or collect them into the office, and then they return them at dismissal. So they still allowed them to come there. Then they have some schools who allowed them during lunch breaks or off periods. And so the goal with the norms is to just see progress and kind of doing what's best for your community, not saying everyone needs to do these exact things in this exact order at the exact same time. And so with that being said, we have created a blank template for you guys. So you're going to receive this chart right here, but you're also going to receive one that's blank so that you can go and fill in what your community believes in and wants to see happen for EdTech norms and intentional tech use. And so you can start with what's tangible and reachable for your community. You know, we don't know the dynamics and the parental and teacher concerns and the context and the use behind everything at every school, right? And so you know your community. So we're providing a recommendation guide that's based on extensive research and collaboration with our partners and what we do every day, but then also a blank template for you guys to kind of do what works for you. And we're happy to assist with that if and when needed. Okay, so we looked at some of these survey results to see what you guys thought and how technology is impacting the community, the EdTech use there. And so the first one, what if anything has made you concerned about one-to-one devices in your schools? The top three were reduced handwriting, and foundational skill development, reduced student attention, focus, and excessive total screen times. Those were the main three concerns. The second one was kind of about the policy. Does your school have a written policy regarding daily one-to-one device use of screen time? And so it was kind of split. Yes, some schools had clear school-wide expectations. Some schools had no policy at all. So those two were equal and clear. And then general guidance, but not consistently enforced. And then no formal policy, left to teacher discretion was equal. And then the highest was yes, but determined at the classroom and teacher level. So this is kind of exactly why we are suggesting and introducing a screen time audit. This will be a great way to kind of determine a school policy and then make it clear so that the expectations are known. If there's not a policy determined and clearly communicated, then intentional and effective technology use isn't possible. As a teacher, I used to have to, back in the day, I know it's different, but this is what all the tech ed reminds me of because I lived it, but we had to submit a request for movie time. And we weren't allowed to show movies on rainy day recess. And if we read a novel or we had, that had a movie to it, there was procedures and protocol where we had to submit a request and kind of justify the intentional use and write how long the length of the movie was and a supporting activity that kind of went with it. And that was to ensure that kids weren't just watching TV and movies all day, right? And so this kind of reminds me of that. It seems very within reach to kind of have similar protocols in place, to think intentionally about tech use, when, where, and why, especially like turning in weekly lesson plans. There's so many little spaces to put in there, and it would be easy to see and seamless to just add one box of, tech use and just put, what you're doing, so that you're aware of how often you're seeing it in your own lesson plans and kind of pausing and thinking before just turning to the tech. And then another thing to add there is, as a teacher, we had to collaborate together and have cohesive protocols for scheduling tests, and to make sure, and back in the day with the movies too, but test schedules is something that is already in place with many teachers who teach kids where they switch classes and see different teachers. And so we would have to indicate and work together and say, okay, I'm going to have a test on this day. Okay, wait, there's already 3 tests that day, so I have to move my test back, or, pick another day. And that's to ensure that there's not too much testing that's, for one child in one day. So even though teachers teach different subjects, they have to work together and kind of map out who's going to do a test on what day. And so the same could be done for tech. We could put on the little schedules and the test calendars, tech day, tech and religion, tech and math. Oh, wait, there's already, 2 tech periods. I'll do that on Tuesday or something, to ensure that we don't go over those recommended times or our desired times that we want them spending on tech. So those are just a couple of ideas that can help with that. Then the third question was about how were the EdTech apps like vetted before use, and most said informal review. Teachers or staff kind of decide case by case. And so we were thinking about how corporations and even as Smart Families, before we can use a new software or download Teams or Zoom or whatever it is, there's a highly screened process. It has to go through multi-stage approval. And sometimes we find that it's not out of reach for schools to have the same protocol and have things, vetted and, researched and intentional, selecting what programs and softwares can be used before kind of just throwing them in. Then we're talking about this one, number 4 is one of my favorites. In which areas are you most concerned about students' academic development? And the highest ones were writing, attention span, and critical thinking. And I loved this one because when I went from teaching to Smart Families, I was teaching 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and my children, my personal little girls, were only in pre-K at the time, and I was thinking and reflecting about how teachers have this really special, expansive view on these students and their critical thinking. And I got to thinking, if my child, when they're older in middle school, I can't really get a good view of their critical thinking skills and their academic focus. I mean, I'm just seeing what they come home and they've been in school all day and there's only a couple hours before they go to bed, and then the weekend's the weekend, right? And so the teachers are privy to this view of how students collectively and individually are really maintaining focus and able to problem solve. And when you're in the classroom for so long, and then over the years, you just see like a general kind of decline and decrease in focus, it is troubling. And so this is such a timely thing. And I think we're all here to kind of support, and hopefully we can see this pendulum swing the other way, because there's been so much research that's kind of showing that the devices and screen time in general is kind of affecting their attention for sure. So that's good to see that most people are seeing that too in the admin level. And then we have, what grades are most affected by the one-to-one device challenges? The top tier here was middle school. And this is something that is so aligns with everything we're kind of saying with our neuroscience at Smart Families, because ages 9 to 14 is the rewiring of their brain, and their brain is under construction. And researchers refer to this as the second window of opportunity. And so at this exact age is typically when students are spending the most time on them, and they're first going home with these devices. And so this is a critical time where it's really key to develop those lifelong skills that they're going to need at this exact time in their life. And so skills like creative problem solving and discerning how to use this technology, when to stop using the technology, how to work through distractions, all of those skills that they haven't built up yet that we really need to hone in on. And this coincides with the age where they're taking these devices home and doing a lot on them. So we just kind of want to ensure that, have we properly prepared them? Have we trained them? Have we set up these foundational skills, executive functioning skills, discernment, and learning how to properly use the device and how to think through things before they go search and answer. And so that's where we want to, one of the norms would be about tech ed and ed tech, to teach them about the devices they're using and how to use them and how their brain's working alongside or prior to taking these devices home and using them so frequently. And then, what feedback are you receiving from parents? And most said here that they have expressed interest in seeing reduced screen time, which we think this chart will help with that. It will be helpful to have this audit kind of by grade band to suffice, and kind of set the expectation and communicate that, so their concerns will hopefully be more interesting of the intentional tech use. So that is our survey feedback. And then, just to define what we mean by screen times, is the total one-on-one time a student spends engaged on a laptop or a Chromebook or a tablet or like a personal device during the school day. So we don't count like teacher-led, whole group use of a shared screen. So, it's going to be using things like using screen time in study hall or homeroom, classwork, programs, review tools, all the things, but it doesn't count the teacher-led whole group instruction. So important distinction, a browsing dashboard is helpful, but it's not the same thing as a whole device screen time audit. So just kind of understanding the differences between one-to-one use. And then I think Douglas is going to take you through how to run a screen time audit.
Thank you. We developed this screen time audit because we're aware at Smart Families that most schools, most teachers, admins, parents, even students don't realize how much time they're spending looking at a screen during the school day. Most schools have some sort of monitoring software, whether it's GoGuardian or something else, but a lot of that software, it only monitors their browser activity. It only looks at what they're doing in Chrome. It only measures how long they're spending in Chrome or Google Classroom or a Google extension that's attached to Chrome. It doesn't look at how much time they're spending on all those other EdTech apps that are on the device. And if we're talking about total screen time limits, we're not just concerned about what they're doing on the internet. We're concerned with the time they're spending on the device, period. So this audit can serve to instruct how to perform a whole device screen time audit so that you know exactly how much time a student is spending with their eyes glued to a one-to-one device during a school day. So just to walk through it really quickly, we have a 6-step workflow. And also, if this seems a little complex, we have a full packet ready for schools to implement this process, and we're happy to walk schools through it, help you interpret the data, set it up for you. We're here to help, and we're here to make this possible for schools to implement. We don't want this to seem difficult. So there's a simple 6-step workflow. You run the audit over a normal 10 school day audit window. And the reason for doing 10 days instead of a single school week is to account for any outlier days, right? You want as much data as possible without the audit running for an extended period of time. So set a normal 10 school day audit window. You want to pair the audit with teacher surveys. All of the data that exists about screen time in schools, it typically comes from, it's anecdotal or it comes from teacher reportage. And that's valuable. It's good to know what teachers think students are doing in the classroom or doing at school. But as you know, students are also using their devices during study hall. They might be using them between classes. They might be on them at lunch. And also, when teachers plan their courses, and I know this because I used to teach myself, I would account for the time in my instruction that a student would be on a screen. But if I had 10 minutes at the end of class and students wanted to work on homework or needed to work on a project, I often wouldn't consider that as part of their screen time total, right? But it is. You want to count all one-to-one use, not just one platform. So again, the limitation of software like GoGuardian is that it only looks at web browsing activity. That's one platform. There's over 2.8 million, I believe, EdTech apps in the Google Play Store, right? Google Chrome is one of them. So you have to look at the use of all of these apps, not just one platform. You want to pull the average daily minutes, what apps are accounting for the most screen time, the time of day they're using them. For example, if you see that there's a bump during student study halls, you might want to look at what apps they're using. If there's a certain, let's say, math app that's taking up all their time in study hall, you have to ask yourself, do they really need that much practice in math, or is the app just gamified and they're enjoying playing it for the fun of it? You can break it down to grade, campus, and the granular level of individual students. Once you have all this data, you want to convert it to weekly minutes, and then you can compare to whatever guardrails you've established, and then you can look at what's happening. You can see what classes are taking up too much screen time, whether it's appropriate, and whether that is the kind of ratios that you want across your school day. And then every term, you want to re-audit to see where you've landed. So what the reporting layer needs to show: total screen time by grade, campus, and app, granular app and device usage down to the student level, time of day patterns, top apps that are being used, activity across devices and operating systems. That's important. If you have a single SSO login for your students, you can track their use across devices and across devices. And if you use the recommended software that we found, which is called Lightspeed Insight, you can even track them across different OSs. So that's all why the audit is not just a teacher survey. Teachers can't keep track of all this stuff. They don't know. And it's also not just a browser report. So we have our weekly guardrails, again, here at the bottom. And again, these are weekly. These are the converted daily limits just multiplied by 5. And again, these are maximum limits. These are not targets. Okay, so I'm going to move through the rest of this fairly quickly so we have time for Q&A. The primary
Douglas,
policy document. Yeah.
Douglas, pardon my interruption, because I know I work closely with Douglas, and he's incredibly intelligent on the technology side. And I do want to highlight something that Douglas just mentioned. We have found GoGuardian to be one of the most common programs that are being utilized currently. I could be wrong, but it's what we're hearing is the most popular in numbers. we have identified it is not able to capture, like he is explaining, all of that screen time use, because it will only capture those that activity that goes through Google Classroom and Google Chrome, which leaves a very big gap in numbers. We've done our own research internally here, and we found one other program. If you could just repeat it again, it's Lightspeed.
Lightspeed Insight.
Lightspeed Insight. We're not saying go out and buy it. We really don't have, like the personal relationship, but based on the research, that program would be able to encompass all of the screen time use, which makes it a lot easier to be able to just run a report, and obviously incredibly accurate, which is what we're trying to get.
Thank you, Hillary. So the main policy document we shared in advance of this meeting was called Safer, Smarter EdTech. If you looked at it, it's a very long, complicated document, and it's meant to be the nuts and bolts kind of policy framework for a school to use EdTech in a healthy, beneficial, most productive way. So I'm just going to walk through the basic structure of it. We're not going to get into too many details because there's too much for the time that we have. But basically, the beginning of the document is really the most important part. It's our executive summary and introduction. We make 4 main points. First one is that EdTech, of course, can be extremely useful in certain scenarios, but it is not inherently better than human-centered learning. That is backed up by pretty much all the research that we've found. Human beings are wired biologically to learn from face-to-face interaction with other human beings. It's just the way we are. And whenever you interpose a screen between a child and the world, it short circuits their retention and their cognitive development. They don't learn as well from screens as they do from people. Number 2, technology by itself rarely improves learning outcomes. Results depend on pedagogy and implementation. So our main standard is minimum effective tech. Use the least tech necessary to accomplish your academic goals, whatever those goals are. At the end of the day, the effectiveness of a classroom instructional environment falls on the teacher. It depends on how well that teacher interacts with their students, forms those personal connections, creates an environment of trust and respect, and engages with them as if they're human beings. They're people, And when I used to teach, the most profound moments I had with students were those one-on-one interactions that could happen in a crowded classroom, but they would happen at one student's desk, right? And you can see the light come on in students' eyes when you're in front of a group of them and you're sharing your passion for the subject and you're sharing your own experience, and you connect with them, the eye contact, you walk around the classroom, you move around, you look at what they're doing. That's extremely important. And that's a skill that teachers have to develop. And I think that there's so much emphasis now on EdTech that the fundamentals of teaching often get missed. Number 3, too much screen exposure can displace stronger practices and create cognitive, developmental, and behavioral trade-offs. For example, I found that my teaching career was split into 2 parts. The early part was before the iPhone was released. And then the second part was well afterwards. And I saw the difference in that prior to the widespread use of smartphones, students were eager and excited to engage in one-to-one things like conversation, to debate each other in class, to have Socratic seminars. Years later, once smartphones were everywhere and every student had them, students really didn't like that stuff. They felt awkward. Conversations would devolve into arguments. A lot of students just wouldn't participate. And so you see just in that one example, the behavioral and the developmental trade-off. A high school student should be able to engage in a civilized discussion with their peers without it devolving into an argument or shutting down and not speaking, right? Number 4, the goal is harm reduction. Keep the benefits that matter. There are obvious benefits to EdTech, especially with students who have things like accessibility issues. Keep those benefits that matter while putting limits around the costs, around the detriments to all this technology. So to sum up, use technology when it serves a clear academic goal and in the smallest amount necessary. So our core recommendation is minimum effective tech. Our shift is not anti-tech. It is a move towards smaller, clearer, more defensible use. So we define maximum tech as many platforms, always open devices, and screen-first routines. If students walk into a classroom, sit down, immediately open their laptops, and then don't shut them until the end of class, that's a problem. Minimum effective tech, what do we mean by that? The smallest tool set possible, the smallest stack necessary to accomplish an academic goal, the shortest necessary time to do it, and clear academic purpose behind every use. It does not mean simply throwing Kahoot or Quizlet at students because the teacher hasn't planned for that day or wants to fill some time during class. Human-centered learning, teacher-led instruction, paper when it is stronger, and attention and relationships are protected. It's highly important, as we've reiterated across this presentation already. So 3 questions that a school we think should ask themselves for every tech decision. Number 1, is this tool genuinely indispensable for the learning goal? Number 2, what is the shortest time and smallest stack that would still work? That might take a little trial and error, of course. Number 3, what stronger analog or human-led option would or could this displace? If we bring this ed tech, this device or this app into a classroom, what is it taking the place of, right? So school-wide principles for every grade, we discussed these in the document. These apply across every grade band. Instruction, minimum effective tech. You want to prioritize paper, especially for long or complex reading and major assessments. We see study after study showing that when it comes to reading comprehension, paper is just better. Students annotate more, they take more notes, they spend more time with it, they're not distracted by whatever else is going on in their device. Handwritten notes should be the default in lecture style contexts, of course, unless the student has some sort of accommodation that prevents them from doing that. System design. Of course, phone-free classrooms remain a standard. You want to have one main platform per purpose. In a math class, oftentimes I've seen with math and reading, there's often a lot of app redundancy. And all that does is increase their screen time. It doesn't lead to better learning outcomes. Keep the stack small. One LMS, one core reading suite, one core math suite, very few extras. As for safeguards, you want to protect your teacher and your family boundaries. You want to vet tools for privacy, advertising, and profiling. For example, the YouTube app that's installed on a device will track students' activity, feed that activity into advertising algorithms so that when the child gets online, they start seeing targeted ads based upon what the algorithm thinks they like. I think that's problematic on a school device. Number 3, you want to avoid all those free products. They're tempting, of course, but as any of you have seen our app trap presentation, you know that nothing is really free. These apps that are free, they monetize the attention and they seek to hold the student's attention in unhealthy ways. So just be really careful whenever you use something that's free. How the age band section is organized. This again reiterates our daily limits. Each band follows the same logic. This is referencing the structure of the document. You have developmental priorities for each band. Those are outlined here in the boxes, right? Then you have the device norms, what devices the research shows and that we think are most acceptable for that age band. Screen time target, tool guidance, so which apps are best, and then AI rules. When is AI appropriate? When does it become appropriate? When should they start learning about it? Okay. So we'll just quickly look at a sample grade band. We're going to look at grades 6 through 8. Our target was less than or equal to 60 minutes per day across all apps during the school day. Devices, one-to-one Chromebooks are acceptable if they stay closed except during defined tech blocks. For reading and math, we suggest one main program for a clear purpose. Reading tools are mainly for students below benchmark. Math tools should stay short and consistent. For assessment and review, tools like Kahoot, Quizlet quizzes, and Lookit, they should be used limited. They shouldn't be an everyday thing. It shouldn't even really be an every other day thing. 1 to 2 sessions per week per subject, 5 to 10 questions. Focus on review rather than using those tools to actually teach. For creation and writing, docs and slides, of course, for publishing and presentations, that's great, but keep early stages on paper. Have students develop their drafts on paper. And then for short coding and robotics exercises, that's all they really need is the use within these enclosed blocks. And in middle school for AI, we really don't believe that students in middle school should be using independent generative AI for any reason. We think that middle school is a time for students to develop foundational skills. which AI will replace if they use it instead of developing the foundational skills. We think that middle school is a great time for teachers to model examples of AI use and to show how AI can hallucinate and make mistakes. And so with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Ashley to talk about 3 simple ideas that you can do to start implementing these strategies in your schools. Thank you.
And they're fun and easy ways. They don't have to be anything complicated. So the first one is you could implement something like Tech-Free Fridays, and kind of this can be something that, you know, or Tech-Free Tuesdays, whatever works best. Or you could do a tech-free week and kind of, again, start with what's tangible, what makes sense in your community. You can make sure you have paper activities, movement, discussion, art labs, books, games. Smart Families can help with supplies, paper, prizes, planning ideas, and things like that. So get creative with it and kind of test the waters, test what it looks like, feels like, and the results that come from having tech-free Fridays or tech-free week or tech-free periods, or maybe even tech-free hours. We've heard of schools doing tech-free time zones during the day. From this block to this block is just no tech. And so kind of being challenged to come up with different ways to kind of get the creative brains going and cognitive problem solving and all of those skills come into light, and just social engagement and interacting with each other and their teachers. 2 is train the adults on the tools. So providing training, making sure that teachers and staff understand the features and defaults and data practices and best use of the apps that they're being asked to use or using. And then 3, device-free assessments. This is important and fairly easy to do. Maintain in-house non-screen check-ins for reading, writing, and math. And so schools can have a clear view of what students can do without a device. And so Smart Families can help you and provide these assessments. You can come up with your own. But this one's really important because we're hearing from a lot of upper education people, principals, admin, college professors that are going back to blue books and going back to implementing kind of a handwritten essay and turning towards those things and saying, don't put the devices for this assessment, leave them outside the classroom, because they are really trying to ensure that the product is fully the students and that they're able to kind of do that work in that time frame on their own. And so that is some ways that we can do that. And then the next slide is human-led and analog should lead. So just as we've kind of been saying, a theme here is human connection every time. So when you have the choice to teach concepts in the relationship and live and face-to-face, and that human connection is essential for learning to take place. And so being a teacher, you know, that is the best thing about being a teacher, is connecting with the students. And Douglas talks about that light bulb going off and just that student-teacher rapport. They take such value in what comes from their teachers. And so it is a really important piece, and just to use tech only when necessary and to supplement the learning, not to drive it. So that just kind of reiterates that. And then our last slide before questions is just talking about how we can support you and how we can best support you. We can do screen time audit assistance and interpretation for you. We can offer staff trainings. We can offer tech-free Friday ideas, paper, supplies, and incentives. Like I was saying about those reading, writing, and math assessments to preserve an offline benchmark. We can help you come up with those or brainstorm ideas with you. And we can help with policy creation, review, rollout discussion, and family communication support. And you can also feel free to reach out and let us know what would be most useful for your school. Let us help us help you, and tell us where you would like support. And so with that, we would love for people to let us know. And then some questions, and open this for Q&A. And here's a guide to get started. Where is your current blind spot on total one-to-one screen time? Which grade band or tool category feels most urgent in your school? And what is one policy or practice change you could pilot next month, or any other questions that you may have? We would love to hear from you and open it to you guys.
Well, thank you, Ashley and Douglas. Y'all did an amazing job of presenting a lot of information that we hope is very tangible. Can y'all hear me? My microphone is
Mhm.
acting weird. Okay. Okay, great. Thank you. And we'd love to hear from principals either now or by email to the team, and just let us know how we can better support you in EdTech. If there's anything now, I'll be quiet.
Good morning. Thank you for sharing today. Can you spell in the chat the insight that you were discussing? Light speed, or what that's named?
Yes, I'll put it in there. No problem. It's called Lightspeed Insight.
And Douglas, maybe you can explain like you did to me. We believe there's an opportunity to add Lightspeed in conjunction with GoGuardian, not as a replacement, which I think might be appealing to some individuals who already have GoGuardian in place. It's hard to make these transitions and relearn something brand new.
Yeah, we envision using Lightspeed in conjunction with GoGuardian. A lot of schools already use GoGuardian. GoGuardian is great for managing browser activity. It's great for creating an allow list for websites. It's great for restricting certain apps from being used, period. But it doesn't show you what they're doing across apps that have been approved, right? Lightspeed Insight can supplement GoGuardian and give you a total picture of what students are doing on those devices.
And Hillary, we have two questions on the chat that are kind of similar. Kyle says, we start the school year with a Smart Families presentation. What does year 2 presentation look like? Could we do something similar to this with our teachers? Camille says, I know teachers need training on tech, but the time is so limited. Quality training that is short but productive and with the teacher device would be most helpful.
Yeah, we've actually pondered this exact topic yesterday as we sat down and we're really being strategic in what year 2 and 3 will look like from our schools, and some schools entering year 4, which is really crazy to think about possibly. But in this scenario, we have 2 opportunities. Year 2 will be about the vestibular system and the body's reaction to technology. What we are considering offering is this EdTech teacher training as an ancillary training available for any school that would like it. So following the main norms and the main mission of Smart Families is to educate about that technology use in general and those smartphones. We will have that teacher presentation, is what we're going to call it, that teacher presentation available, but then also offer this more in-depth style teacher training that will go into some more even nitty-gritty of helping teachers navigate this time. Like you saw here today, I think we can even go a little bit deeper with the teachers to have better support them. So our goal would be able to offer that for any school at any particular time, at any year of where they are with their program. And yes, I know the sweet spot, 30 minutes. You know, we love a whole hour. I know we can't always get a whole hour. In that place, we would probably offer more than one presentation, if at all possible, or an online version like this, where your teachers can either listen to it at another time after school or whatever it might be that works best for your community. We're pondering all of those options at this time. And how would you recommend to address wanting to be a more tech-forward school, but understanding the importance of its intentionality, right? I think defining what is most important when it comes to being tech-forward, looking at the skills that parents want the children to learn when it comes to technology, looking at the skills that children do need to learn when it comes to technology, and making it very intentional, writing that out, just like you would do any sort of goalposts for what they need to learn in math, what they need to learn in reading and writing. Create those same standards for that and treat it as if it's almost like a core subject, so that teachers have a pure understanding of what they're trying to achieve when it comes to teaching children in technology. I think that's a great question, and we ponder a lot here is not every school has a computer lab, but you certainly have time within the day to potentially incorporate this education so that students understand the difference. This is the 30 minutes that I'm going to learn about technology. And then when I'm in math, I'm learning math. I'm learning these other subjects so that they can even feel the difference in their brains, and they will retain more information. I missed anything, Douglas, Ashley, feel free to answer that.
Yeah, I wanted to just add one thing really quickly. Every school is different. You know, we don't want to seem prescriptive on saying every school needs to follow these exact limits, right? For example, the school in my neighborhood, the public school in my neighborhood is a magnet school for media production, right? The school that I used to teach at was heavily inspired by Montessori and Waldorf. Okay, so those are two completely different learning environments. The media-focused magnet school is going to need a higher screen time limit because they're trying to accomplish different goals than the Montessori Waldorf influenced environment. Like Hillary said, it's about being clear about what your goals are and what is the least tech necessary to accomplish those goals, using it intentionally.
So for Kaylin and Camille and any other principal or administrator on this call, soon we'll be doing our planning meetings with you if you have not done them yet for your next year in our program. We will incorporate language into that planning process to give schools the opportunity to add an ed tech training. It will be different from, like I said, the regular teacher presentation. And so you just sort of kind of, for me, solidified, the best way forward for us. We were pondering it yesterday, so I appreciate that question and deciding that, yes, let's just offer it as an ancillary. And we can be intentional in how we design it. Like I said, I think 30 minutes won't do it justice. There's so much information here, and there'll hopefully be more. And so we can work with you on your school to how much time you have. Great, so this has been recorded. We will share it along with those norms, that open document that Ashley presented. And if you have any questions, we would love to hear from you. Anything you'd like to see some more support on, we're happy to do that. We do have more research that we've been doing, and we're going to continue doing this. And so we hope it is more just a working relationship with our schools in support of a very challenging topic. And we just want to, obviously, like we said, be here to help y'all.